Welcome back to Barbados, Carla.
Thank you,
It's
Shay.
always
Great
so
to
nice
be
to
here.
have you here. And it's launch week for
Yes,
the National Action Plan to end plastic pollution in Barbados.
that's right.
What are you most hopeful for this week?
Well, I'm hopeful. I'm really hoping that we can get some really good momentum with
Yeah.
the National Action Plan, which would set the stage really for the next part, which will be the implementation, which Stacey will talk about in a minute. So we're really excited for that coming up.
I'm really excited for it too. And for Common Seas, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about why this National Action Plan is so important to Common Seas.
Yeah, well, we're so excited and proud to have supported Barbados to develop the National Action Plan. And I think one of the reasons that it's so exciting is because it'll be the first launch in the Caribbean region. And
Wow.
so, yes, it's very exciting for Barbados. And we've got funding from the UK government to do the same in an additional 5 countries to baseline their plastic pollution and to develop a national action plan. So we'll really be using the lessons learned and using Barbados as an example to kind of go out and do the same in other countries in the region. So it's super exciting.
It is very exciting. And I know you mentioned a lot about the support that you give to countries to help them implement. Could you tell me a little bit then about what your role is in this process?
Yeah, so my role usually is centered as the kind of point person in Common Seas, and I work with my counterpart, usually in the Ministry of Environment, so here with Mrs. Thora Lords. And in terms of like the development of the National Action Plan itself, I work with our technical team and with the Plastic Drawdown Committee to understand which policies of those that we model make
Right.
most sense and would fit the best in the context of the country. And we do this through interviews, through an in-person visit, through a policy workshop, through speaking to lovely people such as yourselves,
Thank
our
you.
local coordinators that can help us be our eyes and ears on the ground. So it's really a kind of collaborative effort.
Now, you mentioned the plastic drawdown. A lot of persons may not know what that is.
Yes.
Could you give us a little bit of insight on what the drawdown itself is and how that frames your approach to the National Action Plan right here in Barbados?
Yes, of course. So our approach, we're really keen to make sure that it is evidence-based. So we develop these national action plans, but they need to be based on national data, national
course.
evidence. And so our plastic drawdown tool is a rapid assessment tool that gathers all the disparate sources of data to develop a baseline of plastic generation and plastic pollution on an island context.
Yeah.
We project that over 10 years, and then we have the ability to kind of test the impact of 18 or 20 different policies on that baseline. And so the approach really in order to do that is both centered in data and evidence, but then we bring that back and have the kind of human experience through making sure that it makes sense and speaking to people, and it's really collaborative. We develop a committee. So I would say the approach is grounded in evidence, but also very collaborative.
Collaboration is key,
Yes,
isn't it?
definitely.
And so stakeholder engagement sounds like it's a really big part of your process here. Why is that so important for you and for Common Seas?
Yeah, for sure. Well, as I mentioned, stakeholder engagement is super important to make sure that the model that's developed is as accurate a picture as possible as
Yes.
what is happening here in Barbados. So we want it to be very accurate, and in order to do that, we need to kind of sense check and plug data gaps through interaction with stakeholders. But ultimately, in the end, it's not our document, it's the ministry's document. And so another real key reason why stakeholder engagement is important throughout the process is because it needs to have that buy-in. It needs to be supported by and sort of inputted by the stakeholders that will ultimately be the ones responsible for implementing many parts of the plan.
Now, I know you said this is the first launch in the Caribbean.
That's right.
We're very proud of first here. But was there anything that surprised you in the process of putting together the National Action Plan? What were your expectations versus what actually came out of the evidence?
Yeah, well, I think with anything, I mean, it was such a great opportunity to kind of learn, I think on both sides,
Yeah.
because it was a pretty long process in the end. And I think it's interesting that, for example, with a lot of the data, there were things that we just had no idea about. And in the case of Barbados, it was the case of the suck wells and
Yes.
how that influences the different waste flows. And so we really get into the nitty gritty and get, uncover the boot and sort of look at what's happening underneath. And so that's always a really revealing experience. And so that was a bit more surprising in that, the more you dig, the more you find out. So that was
Yeah.
great to be able to incorporate that into the baseline calculations. But otherwise, I'm just surprised but happy in a good way, really lucky
Yeah.
to be working with the ministry and how supportive they've been and really engaged in the whole process. So that's been a really great experience too.
Well, we're really lucky to have you too, Carla, and the entire Common Seas team. I know we have a launch to get to,
Yes.
and we're excited for that. I'm wishing you guys all the best.
Thank you so much, Shay.
You're welcome.